Well, welcome to the Quiet Warrior Show. My name is Tom Dutta. I am the Quiet Warrior, and I'm excited to have on the show today a special guest who's, well, you can see him if you're on the live stream. He's standing by there. I'm going to take a moment, though, and tell you that we're live streaming across LinkedIn, Facebook, and YouTube, this incredible platform which takes my podcast, The Quiet Warrior Show, to a new level. And you can find the podcast. We'll be producing it in the future. But for today, just enjoy the ride. I want to welcome to the show our special guest, Mr. Kevin KIRKSEY. Hey, Kevin, welcome.
I'm glad to be here. Thank you so much for the opportunity.
Yeah, that's awesome. We were just sort of off mic talking a little bit, and I learned a bit about where you're at, Dallas, Texas, known for the Cowboys, and I just love that whole spirit. I'm here in Vancouver, British Columbia, Canada, Kevin, so we're on the West Coast, and the magic of technology, it's incredible. Now, Kevin, I want to tell everybody before we get rolling here with you about how I discovered you, and it actually came to me through what I call a divine intervention. That somebody contacted me and said, you need to watch this video, and I did the video you did, another interview, and then I found your book, and everybody, you'll see a stock ticker on the screen talking about a book, A Journey from Near Death to New Life, and so I'm teasing you here. For those on the podcast, you can't see that, but we'll talk all about that. And so I did some research, Kevin. I was blown away, and there's a personal connection I have to this interview. So today it's all about you, sir. I'm going to turn it to you and ask you to tell us one thing about yourself that you think nobody knows.
That's a great question. I think there might be a couple things. I'll give you two of them. One is that as a child, all I aspired to do was to become a professional baseball player. I played baseball all the way through college and had a great time. And of course that didn't work out, but that's something that I kind of kept to myself. The other thing is more recently, and that is that I have achieved my life's bucket list. A lot of people create bucket lists for themselves and they want to go climb Mount Kilimanjaro or do something spectacular. Well, I've created my list, I've completed it. And so, I look forward to spending the rest of my life focused on others versus worried about me accomplishing my list.
Well, I love that. And, we're going to get into your book that you wrote, which I just read from cover to cover. And I saw your bucket list and it blew my mind about something about that most bucket lists I've read are these big things that are far out there. Two of them, of the three, were about your wife, which really stole my heart. We'll come back to that in a minute. Everybody, I want to tell you a bit about the depth behind Kevin. 30 years, he's being centered around high-tech sales, business development, marketing, and data networking, IT security, cloud solutions. What does all that mean? Well, he's a guy who creates the future. The future being changed with things like technology. Kevin's won many awards. You can find that on his bio. Check him out. And what I really loved about your background, Kevin, is you have this human capital. You use that to wow customers. You're respected in your industry, fiercely competitive, and you have a lot of experience in many sectors. But today, if everybody's listening, you're probably thinking, wow, we're going to talk about Kevin's career. No, we're not. No, we're not. We're actually going to talk about something called Life 2.0, a journey from near death to new life. And something happened to you, Kevin, that is, quite frankly, very inspiring to me. So why don't we get into that? I call it the hero's journey story. Just take us back to the beginning. Tell us a few things about life and how you ended up at that point, and then something significant happened.
Sure, I'd be happy to. So I was gainfully employed, working very hard, traveling quite a bit. I felt great. I felt fantastic. I didn't have any signs or symptoms or any health issues to be concerned about. And how this story unfolded, I was at a routine doctor's appointment. We were finished. I was walking to the door and I stopped, and out of my mouth came a question that I had actually not been contemplating. And it was a question that later proved to save my life. And it was a question that I have later learned to know came about due to divine intervention. And the question was simply this. I said, "Hey, doc, I feel great. I feel fantastic, as you know. I'm just wondering, is there something we should check on the inside of my body? That's exactly how I asked the question. And he thought about it and he said, yeah, I think maybe you should go do this test, which was a calcium scan score.
Wow. I want to just let you take a breath there for a moment. My heart's racing on that one because I have read the book, and everybody, I'm going to mention that book a lot because I'm going to highly recommend it. It'll be published in January 19th, 2021. You need to get it and read it. You need to pass it on to so many others. Here's the thing. What I remember that I think you're 57 years old. I remember it said
right.
Something about 34 years married. And there was one line, I'm just reading my notes, that Category 5 hurricane is coming. And you're 170 miles from home. And you got this phone call about the result of that test.
Mm-hmm.
There's a range of score in that test. And then you got the actual. Tell us about the numbers.
Yeah, so let me start a little bit before that. So in the book that you're referring to, I talk about my life at the time. I didn't realize it, but it was really the calm before the storm. So when the doctor prescribed this particular test, a calcium scan, it basically measures the amount of calcium in and around your cardiac artery system. It was a 15-minute, take some pictures, leave, and I did that. It's funny, the weekend before the test, I was looking for reasons not to go do the test. I was busy at work. I had a lot of things on my mind. But anyway, I took the test on a Monday, jumped on a plane, went to California. I'm in my first business meeting. My cell phone is blowing up from my doctor's office. After several attempts to reach me, I concluded they're not calling me to tell me the good news. They're calling me because somebody wants to talk to me. When I called back, I was told that the results of this test were not good. And of course, in my personality, I said, okay, great. What does that mean? And I was told, well, it's the worst the doctor's ever seen. And again, I said, well, what does that mean? And I was told I'm at extreme risk of a cardiac event or a stroke at any moment. And so you can imagine what that must feel like when you're told, and you're many hundreds of miles away from your home, that your next step could be your last. So, I asked, what do I do? And she said, well, you need to come home immediately. And so I went back to the airport, got on a flight back to Dallas. I'm on the airplane Wi-Fi looking at this particular calcium scan, trying to understand what is it, what does it mean? And I found a range of scores. I call it Dr. Google. I found a range of 0 to 400. 0 is what you want. 400 is what you don't want. And I thought to myself, well, I can't be a 0 because they said it was bad. And I certainly can't be a 400 because I saw on Dr. Google evidence that extensive cardiac damage is a probability. And I'm thinking, I don't have any damage because I feel fantastic. Well, the very next morning on the way to cardiologist, I called the nurse because I wanted to find out what my score was. Where was I? Well, I was right. It wasn't 0 and it wasn't 400. And Tom, you read about this in the book. It was 6,518.
Wow.
I felt like I might have almost wrecked my car when I heard that news. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I have that number on my paper circled, and it's incredible. And so take us back to that moment, Kevin. I want to see some emotion from you. What did you feel? What emotions did you go through when you got that number?
The first thing I felt was disbelief. I explained to the nurse on the phone. I said, that's impossible. That can't be. I don't feel anything. But it dawned on me in that exact same moment. It occurred to me why that test seemed to take longer for me than that they had said. I found out later that the technician ran it 3 times in a row because she couldn't believe the results either. She got the same results each time that she ran it. So that was done unbeknownst to me. So disbelief. The next emotion I had was I tried to convince myself that it's okay because that was just my primary care physician saying that the results were the worst he had seen. I'm on my way to a specialty group of cardiologists, and this is what they deal with on an everyday basis. I go into the appointment. I explain to the physician, I'm here because I had this high result, and I'm sure you've seen those. He just kind of looked down and shook his head, and he said, we've never seen this before. So at that point in time, I became very frightened. So the emotion that came about was I was scared, because I'm sitting here. I've learned that the medical machines are saying there's a problem. The physicians are saying there's a severe problem here, and we've got to find out what it is, and time is running against us. So I became probably at the most frightened state of my life up until that point.
Wow. Well, first of all, I want to acknowledge, Kevin, as you take a breath there, the courage to share this story and to know how to use this story to help other people. You know, there's many people who have these events, not so much maybe in the same circumstance, and they don't really discover that it's powerful to use that to help other people on the other side. I want to share with you and publicly to my audience why this story is so meaningful to me, and that in January 2018, my father passed away unexpectedly from a heart attack. And now my parents divorced when I was in my teens, and my dad lived on his own. I had some regrets, wondering, you know, if he had somebody with him, maybe he would have the time to get some help. I don't even know what happened in the room that day, if it was fast or whatever. And I'm not saying this to compare to your circumstance. Yours is incredible. I'm saying this to expand on this because it's deeper in the meaning of your story. I want to use it as a teaching moment, and then we'll get back to the story. In that, for those who know my work and the book I wrote, was estranged from my dad most of my life. He was a military commanding officer. I love my dad, but he was a bad alcoholic. And so for most of my life, from my teen years, I never saw him. He left home. And it was 3 months before he passed that something had me connect with him. I finally said, let's have coffee. And I sat at a Starbucks. I took a selfie of him and I can send it to you. He's got a big smile on his face. Yeah. I didn't recognize him. And my father,
wow.
He said at that coffee meeting, he said, son, I want to tell you, I'm sorry for all the things that I did. And he gave forgiveness, and it was a big weight off my shoulder. And then we just talked. And at the end, Kevin, I said, hey, Dad, I said, I can't go too fast because there's just so much to catch up on. But how about we start in January right here having coffee once a month? Well, the phone rang in January from my mom, and she said, I'm sorry to tell you this, but your father's died. And so the one teaching moment to all the audience listening is that one of the things I found in Kevin's story in his book is that it's deeper. You know, make the time to connect with the people that you need to be with, and live life to its fullest, and don't have the regrets. I never had the time with my dad, Kevin, after that. I'll finish with this. I have an uncle, my Uncle Tom, my namesake, who had quadruple bypass, and he had woken up many, many years ago finding 3 of his arteries were clogged or, you know, full of plaque. And he survived, and today he's healthy and he's living. And one thing your book and your story has done is help me understand a lot about the journey before and after, and also the impact on you and the caregivers in your life, particularly your wonderful wife Joan. So it's a great book and a great story. So let's go further. I want to just mention something, then I'll give it back to you about the event. Read on roughly page 56 of the book. These are in the PDF I was reading. It says, I've never been disconnected from the company for more than 7 days, even when away on vacation. I don't ignore my work. This was in a transparent letter to your sales family, I guess, about your situation. Another comment, I've crippled my wife. Another comment, how I came to peace with my maker, or have I come to peace with my maker correctly? Just talk about those few things. You started having these thoughts just, you know, as you went into the next chapter of this, which was your surgery.
Exactly. Well, leading up to those thoughts, Tom, I think I should share the following. So at that cardiologist's office, they did all the testing that they could do. They were completely not non-conclusive. So they sent me to have a cardiac, what they call they send a scope up in you and look around your heart.
Yeah.
And it's called a cardiac catheterization. And I remember during that procedure, I'm kind of awake, even though I'm sedated. I'm kind of in that la-la land. I remember asking the doctor, I said, hey, doc, how's it going? And all I can remember, and today as I'm sitting here visiting with you, I can picture it as if it's happening right now. His face is right next to mine, and he said, young man, you've saved your own life. I didn't know what that meant. And he said, let's get you to your room and talk to you and your wife about what we do from here. We got to the room, and he basically said that one of my major arteries was 100% blocked. One was 90 and one was 80. My wife asked him, why is he alive if one of his major arteries is completely blocked? And he said, it's what we call God's work. The heart has a way of building these collaterals, and it was giving his heart enough blood supply to sustain life, but that could give at any point in time. So at that time, Tom, I was given one option and only one option for survival, which was open heart cardiac bypass surgery, which you're familiar with. And so at that point in time, it dawned on me, I need to come to peace with my maker. It dawned on me that I didn't know how to do that. I was raised in a church. I've read the Bible, but nobody handed me a manual saying, when you get to that point in time in your life that you need to come to terms with your maker and your own mortality, these are the steps you do. So I was faced with that. I was faced with being very concerned that perhaps in my life I have crippled my wife because, I work so very hard to provide for a living, and I was the IT guy in the family. I fixed everything, and I thought, what happens if I go here in the short term? I'm going to leave her in potentially a mess, and so I was deeply, deeply concerned about that. And so I got to a point where here I am just outside the operating room with my wife and my son. I saw terror in her eyes. I saw that my son was discombobulated, even though they wouldn't speak about it. They were kind of in a strange state. I kissed them both and said goodbye, and they're wheeling me off to the operating room. And it was at that point in time that I said a prayer that was, I call it a life-changing prayer that I said that just came out. I'd love to share it with you if you're interested.
Yeah, please do. I'd love to hear that.
Yeah. So if you can imagine, I'm being wheeled into an operating room, not knowing if I'm coming out alive. I just don't know. I was frightened, and all I could do was close my eyes. And here's the prayer that I said. It wasn't scripted. I didn't design it. It just came out. And I said, "Dear God, I've come to terms with my mortality. My precious wife is not ready for my passing, but please take me today if it is your will to do so. And if I am to survive, I'd like your help with achieving a bucket list of the 3 most essential items in my life. Number 1, I'd like to dance with my wife again. Number 2, I'd like to hold my wife's hand and take a walk. And number 3, I'd like to meet and get to know my unborn grandchild. I give myself completely and entirely up to you." About that time, the doors open up. I'm in this operating room. I see lights and I see people. And, it's funny. I then felt prayer coming back. I've never experienced this before. And as you've read the book, you'll probably recall some sections where many of the employees that were part of my organization were writing to me, but a large group of them said, "We're going to get together at the time of your surgery and we're going to pray for you." It still kind of brings tears to my eyes because I felt that prayer at that moment. I felt them praying. And, the good news is I felt the prayer. The even greater news is God answered mine. I have accomplished that bucket list. I'm sitting here doing perfectly fine speaking with you. So I've danced with her. We've taken that walk, and I have an amazing grandson. So it's really
thank you.
cool.
Thank you for sharing that. I'm looking down at my paper here, and I have those 3 things written in my notes that you mentioned. Pretty amazing. I told you up front, it stole my heart because, I think first of all, one, I'm going to use the word vulnerability. You're a man, and you lead business leader, but men don't show vulnerability very often. It's very hard to find a man who will get on live stream or even say, you know what, my bucket list was including holding my wife's hand. We're taught by our fathers sometimes or raised by life around us not to show weakness, but that's a strength. And I think that's an awesome bucket list. And so the other thing I'm thinking about here is, and in coaching, I coach other leaders in my work. And forgive me for the question, but sometimes I just ask this to inspire thought. When you look at this whole situation leading up to this, where, if any, were your fingerprints on this? I think about things like lifestyle, and you were traveling and working, and even the comment I read about, I never leave my work, even when I'm on holidays. Can you think of anything you would have done differently leading up to that point? And there's no blame in this situation here. That may
Uh,
have made you healthier.
there's a lot of things, Tom, and it's a great question, and thank you for asking.
You're
Yeah,
welcome.
I had all the risk factors, right? I was a type 2 diabetic. I was overweight. I had a history of smoking. I had a history of eating anything I wanted, including dessert. So I wasn't eating properly. So I had them all, but still, that wasn't enough to cause me to go get checked out, because at the time, I believed this always happens to the other guy, not me. And
Yeah.
that's what I would change. If I were to go back to that time, I would convince myself that no, it doesn't just happen to the other guy. It's going to happen to you. Make some choices, make some different choices in your life. And I would have, but I guess I wasn't wise enough or smart enough to think that way.
Yeah, thank you. I'm going to just say that the another word I'm going to use here is humility. And everybody, it's a teaching moment, what you just heard from Kevin. Kevin, I believe that when people see this interview or even the live streaming now, when they hear you say that, you become more real and relatable. And there's millions of men and women around the world who are listening to that going like, my God, that's my story. That this is a wake-up call. And at age 31, I maybe didn't cover this, but my cholesterol was so high. I'm a South Asian man and I have high risk factors. My dad had type 2 diabetes. My dad didn't eat properly. In fact, he ate so many desserts and sweet. He didn't take his medication properly. And most of the executives I know through my work, they're on this unthinking treadmill of life. And you're right. I mean, it's like I'm invincible. Success comes to me, and then there's this wake up call, whether it's needing to lose some weight or high blood pressure or an incredible event like yours. So thank you for sharing that honesty and that humility. Tell me about room 610. There's
Ah,
something special.
room 610 was the room that I was in when I woke up after having open heart surgery. And it's really where Life 2.0 that I write about in this book and that I talk about publicly was born, was ignited. I was just like anybody else. I woke up from surgery and I got a chance to, my wife was there and I got a chance to see her. And there was a nurse who introduced himself to me. And I was in intensive care at the time. And I thought, well, I'm just happy to be alive. And then my mind went to, gee, I wonder what needs to happen for me to get out of here. And what began to occur over the next few days in room 610 was absolutely life-changing for me. I started to notice, and this may be just part of my personality, Tom, but I started to notice that invariably the nurses, the food service people, the janitors, the physicians, the aides, the technicians, anybody that was coming in and out of that room, it seems like they would do a little thing for me, just something little. And I made a note of that. It could have been, I remember a janitor coming into my room the first day, and he was going to clean the floor. And before he did, he said, "Sir, I want to make sure this is an okay time for you, and I can come back at any point in time." And I'm thinking to myself, who does that? I remember distinctly one of the objectives of post-op surgery for this type of surgery is that they want you to get up and walk around. And one of the main goals was to be able to walk around the nurse's station. And I got to a point I was able to do that with some help. And I was met, it's rather than just saying, "Hey, great, Kevin, you made it," I was met with a high five by a nurse. And I was met with that same nurse saying, "You know what? You're an absolute rock star." And that really came home to me. I remember trying to get up in my chair one time on my own, and I got halfway up and I was in such pain I had to stop. So I was kind of stuck. I couldn't completely get up and I couldn't lay down for fear that it was going to hurt. And I recall seeing a lady go whizzing past my door, and the next thing I know, she's backing up and she says, may I help you?" do you need some help? And I said, yeah, I need some help. And she was kind enough to notice that and come in. She didn't have to. I was not one of her patients, but she did that just out of the kindness of her heart. And I began to reflect on, I counted, by the way, counted and documented over 120 little different things that occurred in that hospital. So there was a lot. And what I began to think about was, oh, wait a minute. These people, they're just like me. They have life's issues. They have life's opportunities. They have bills to pay. They've got spouses, girlfriends, boyfriends, children, etc. But yet the difference here is they give and they give and they give and they give until, and not once do they ever ask for anything in return. And I really started to reflect on that. And it may be because I was happy to be alive. I'm not sure, but I really started tuning into other people. And that continued. That whole notion of the little things continued into cardiac rehab. I had I guess you might call it a religious moment after my surgery that I'd be happy to share with you if you're interested about. Honestly, I don't talk about this a whole lot, but in the spirit of humility and being transparent, I had angels appear to me on 3 different occasions since this whole thing has started, and that I think when I look back is what has tied this whole thing back full circle.
Yeah. Well, first of all, it's amazing. I have something I'm going to surprise you with at the end. I actually drew. I have a tattoo I mentioned to you on my left arm and shoulder, my right. Well, I drew. If I was a tattoo artist, I drew a tattoo for you, and I'm going to show it to you on screen. And in there is a pair of wings as well. So I have to just let's just go in that direction. My brain is going in so many directions here on journeys. You're inspiring me with everything you're saying. So I'm thinking about faith now. I want to share something with you that throughout my life, I discounted my faith. I've said this before, that my parents were born and raised in Fiji, my grandparents in India. I traveled through the UK, was born there on a military base, came to Canada when I was a kid. My dad was a Mormon in the church when my mom met him, didn't drink, smoke. Then he got in the army, started drinking. By faith, he was a Hindu. That's my grandfather, who's long gone. When I came to Canada, my mom baptized me as Catholic. And so I was confused about faith. I mean, I'm going like, what? There's only one God. And then what was happening in my life, I discounted it. I was angry. And, well, you know a bit about my recent bout with tragedy. I fell in a bathtub, cracked a hole in it after doing the first leg of the Ride to Conquer Cancer, Kevin, and got a brain injury. And it's been 2 years now. I've been working through that and some of the symptoms that come with it, including mental health. And it was about a year ago I started watching faith-based shows with my wife. I wear a cross now. I read the Bible, and I'm learning. And this is one of the gifts of your book is it brings the power of spirituality and faith into the equation. That for me, when there was nothing to hold on to, all the institutions crumble around us. Our family, my daughter's gone. I'm an empty nester. There's one thing that'll never be gone, and that's the power of the kingdom, the future, and faith. And I want to read you something that I picked up in the book here. I'll just say that there's many little voices and angels you saw. I totally believe that. You said that you heard them saying, in the surgery at some point, you heard them saying, "Come on, Kevin," because they were trying to restart your heart, and they shocked it 3 times. I'm like, wow, just tell us about that. What on earth?
Well, again, I'll back up a little bit. My wife had an intimate conversation with me the night before surgery. She's a registered nurse by training, and knows a little bit about what I'm going through. And she had a conversation with me, and she said, listen, oftentimes when people have this type of a surgery, they come out reporting having seen a light that they were quite attracted to. And the reason she was telling me this is she said, I need to ask you a very selfish question. If you see the light, don't be afraid, but fight it. I'm not ready for you to go. And I kind of made a joke. My personality was, oh, honey, that's okay. If I see the light, I'll just won't go to it. And then she said that also oftentimes people have this experience where they see themselves, they see the surgery, And she said, if that's the case, don't be afraid. And I said, okay. Well, so I wake up from the surgery. I'm in room 610.
Yeah.
And when everybody had gone, it's just me and my wife, she says to me, did you see the light? And I said, no, I didn't see a light. She said, well, did you see yourself being operated on? I said, no, nothing like that happened. The physician comes into my room. The surgeon comes into my room, sit down and ask me some questions, see how am I doing. This is the first day of surgery. And he's about done. And I said, hey, doc, I'd like to ask you a question. He said, sure, whatever. And I said, did you have a hard time restarting my heart? And he looked like he'd seen a ghost, because he looked up at me and he said, well, yes, I had to give it some extra shocks.
Yeah.
He didn't ask me why I asked, but the reason I asked is because I did hear voices. I honestly today can't tell you it was his voice, but I think it was. But
Yeah.
I heard, come on, Kevin, come on, Kevin, come on, Kevin. And then that's what I heard. And so I thought that was pretty profound. But he was curious to know why I asked that question.
Yeah, I'm getting a pattern of you here. First of all, my brain went somewhere else about the title of the book, 2.0. I was thinking only an IT guy could come up with that one. You remember the old Y2K days where billions were spent and it never happened? But I kind of smiled when I saw that. And then I'm thinking about the why now. I mean, people say the word why. Here's another question that you asked, but then we just heard at the beginning of the interview, and everybody go back and listen to it if you missed it. There was another question Kevin asked at the beginning that really led to saving his life. Now, these are two questions, Kevin, that came out of you, and to me had no foundation other than they just appeared. To me, that is a divine intervention. One of the things I'm passionate about is science and the brain, and I study a lot of that. I also in mental health. I have a passion for that, and as you may know, sometimes I use the terms unconscious mind or subconscious. When I studied all this as part of my work, we only use 8% of our brain, 8%, which is the conscious mind. The other 92%, the unconscious mind, takes everything in, things we hear, and it buries it. And it's when you really dial it down and distance yourself from your thoughts, become mindful, I guess they call it. You know, if you're at work as a sales guy, you're always going to be in your thoughts as you're busy. Right. But when you're meditating or when you're perhaps laying in a hospital with nothing else to think about but yourself, you can find those things. That part of the book just stopped me. Everybody, when you read the book, there's more to that. You've got to explore that. It blows me away. Let me just get into the mental health piece for a minute, because I found your book was very well written and balanced. On page 84 in my PDF version, it said feelings of despair, sadness, question my longevity, depression, motivated by sleep, anger. And this is the thing about this, Kevin, is we hear you now and you're talking, so positively, and you are an inspiration that way. But we know the journey from these things had to be difficult. Tell us about that part, the mental health side, and how that was for you and how you persevered through that.
I began to really feel it as I was going to cardiac rehab. So you have the surgery, you go home for a few weeks, and then you start rehab. And in my case, it was 3 days a week for, I forget, maybe 12, 13 weeks. I forget what the time frame was, but it was very early in the morning. And it was 6:30 in the morning. I was driving to the hospital, and I would tell myself, "You're a broken man. You're broke, and they tried to fix you, and now your life's longevity is at stake, and there's so much that you haven't done in your life that you don't know if you'll be able to finish." And so all these types of thoughts creep in, and I guess that's what people call depression. I began to feel that, and I was so concerned about it. My wife would be by my side constantly. It was almost kind of frightened me, because why is she making sure she's by me? I found out later that she was concerned that if I fell and had a cardiac event and that she had to do CPR, that she was the only one in this world that she trusted to not give up.
Yeah.
And so she felt a need to be by me. And so I remember in rehab, I approached one of the rehab nurses kind of off to the side, and I explained to her, listen, I you don't see it in my face, but I'm I don't think I'm doing so good with handling this. I feel like I became sick way too early in life, and I feel like I've let a lot of people down, and I'm concerned about my future." And she was very kind. She took my hand and she said, "So glad you came and talked to me about it." She said, "It's normal. It's to be expected. You are okay." And as I started getting validation from the world around me that what I was experiencing was not atypical, was not unique, it gave me enough strength to be able to deal with it. And then some life changes happened after that. It's now well behind me at this point.
No, thank you, Kevin. And again, a teaching moment on the show. I mentioned about going through a journey of depression myself from a concussion. My understanding of the clinical definition of depression, just for the show audience, is 2 or more weeks of sadness without a triggering thought. And everybody, the way the brain works is you have a trigger, which could be something you see or experience. It creates a thought, creates a emotion, and then a behavior. And so if you just wake up in the morning and you feel sad and you can't explain why, and that continues for 2 weeks or more, you're clinically diagnosed as in a cycle of depression. And I didn't think I'd be in one in my life, Kevin, until what happened to me. And your story is so parallel because they call it in the hero's journey narrative, which my show is built on, by Joseph Campbell, the dark night of the soul. And for some, that journey takes a year, a month, 2 years. It's going through this period of time where you're coming back. And I just want to make a couple comments so we can move on to the last couple chapters of this story because it's so fascinating. I wrote down here on my notes 6 months. I did live or die daily question is what you had. But everybody, I just want to tell you what a rock star this guy is. I mean, he developed a cardio daily habit, lost 50 pounds, beat diabetes off all your medications, excellent vitals, and started learning more about this Life 2.0, which we'll touch on. I mean, Kevin, you are a rock star, man. I mean, it's incredible. Yeah. It's incredible, but that I believe it's all within you. Like Tony Robbins, another mentor of mine, says, I'm not your guru. You had your faith, but dude, this is all within you. I'm so proud of you and what you've done with this story, but you inspire people. And then the last thing I'll say about that is, your story to me, again, is I lost my dad to heart disease. My uncle survived. But it's given me a wake-up call to take care of myself. And when I looked at your book and hear your story, I'm going like, well, what's the blueprint? How do I do it? And you've laid it out. It's fantastic. Everybody, no matter who you are, if you have high risk for heart disease, diabetes, I have it in my family. I don't have those things at all now. But I'm gonna read and learn Kevin's blueprint. And, knock on wood, but you don't have to go through the dark night of the soul like he did. I want to just ask you a question. He said, "I no longer fear death." We can just cover that quickly because it's not part of the deep part of the story. But why did you fear death, or what was that just during that time where you were thinking maybe I'm going to go?
No, I mean that was a kind of a lifelong thing. Just as a kid, you wonder what death is like, and when it will happen to you, and I don't want it to happen to me. So just the general fear of that whole experience of passing through this journey has been eradicated from my system. I no longer think about it or have those thoughts, et cetera, because I'm absolutely forward thinking in everything that I'm doing.
Well, that's awesome. So we went back to room 610 where that began, and I noted something about, you said Life 2.0 was born during a stay in that room. And then we always have these fun people we remember, right. Nurse Editha. Uh-huh. And I know you're smiling there if everybody can see you, but you guys had this game you played. Just tell us quickly what that was.
I'm so glad you asked for it, because that was absolutely a tipping point into my new life. So she was a nurse during the night shift, and I had to have my blood sugars tested every hour. So they take a sample of blood and they test your sugars. And every time I would see Editha coming, I was thinking, oh my gosh, I'm going to have to ask her for some more morphine because I'm in pain. I had some pain from the surgery. Yeah. And she would come in and she'd test my blood sugars. And one time she says to me, "Hey, Kevin, what do you think the result's going to be?" I said, well, I think it's going to be 130. She says, well, I think it's going to be 115. So she tests it. She goes, well, it was 117. I win. And I thought, oh, okay. So the next time she came in, we played this game. And the next time we played it, we kept playing it. And it dawns on me that I'm no longer thinking about the morphine. Months later, I have this incredible, overwhelming thought about this. I said, she didn't have to do that. She did this just to give me a break, just to give me some peace from the pain. And how wonderful is that for a human being to do something little like that to help another person, and again, not ask for anything in return. And so that's really, with that experience on that, and there was many others, but that in particular, I still stay in touch with Editha. She's since gone on to be a nurse practitioner, and she's very well known and respected at that hospital. And if you've ever heard the name Florence Nightingale, I refer
Yes.
to Editha as the modern day critical cardiac care Florence Nightingale. That's what I refer to her as. So anyway.
Well, what a wonderful story! And as you tell it, there's an inflection in your voice, a big smile on your face. I want to mention mental health again. I learned I had to be taught some skills to deal with my situation, and one of the skills they taught me was called a healthy distraction. And you nailed it. That's exactly what it is. Yeah, step away from the whatever and go do something to distract yourself. She knew something. She knew something. That's awesome. A couple more things before we move to the end here, and I was just blown away by the rehab process, but there was one line that stood out for me, and it was on my mind even this morning. It said, God put me on a path to focus on others versus myself. And then you wrote on page 100 something, unable to repay was the title of the chapter. And just tell me, you have this feeling that you're so grateful to people and unable to repay it. What does that mean?
It started with my observation of all these little things that everybody was doing for my family and myself. And then, I made a comment about seeing angels earlier. I didn't see wings. I didn't see harps. You know what I saw? I saw it through the eyes of others. And I know what I saw, and I know who these people were that I saw these angels from. But I think at that time, it taught me a lesson. And the lesson for me in my life was maybe they were trying to tell me something. Maybe they were trying to tell me, focus on the lives of others through their eyes versus yourself. So all these little things coming to me, nothing being asked for in return, giving, having the experience of the angels through the eyes of others, all kind of put it in focus for me that maybe I should start living a life focused on others. And I was wondering, what does that mean? I didn't really know at the time. And over some time, it occurs to me that what it really means is doing for others what they did for me in the hospital, affirm my value, my relevance, and my importance. And I started trying this. I started trying this with strangers, family members, etc. Doing a small act of kindness, explaining to somebody why they're valuable in your life or why they're important to this world. It could be anybody. And as I did that, I started to see life. I started to see people come to life. And so my mission through this whole journey, through this surgery and what I've experienced is to do just that. And I can't thank enough people enough times, and I don't have enough time to repay it all back. So the best I can do is to move forward as fast as I possibly can, and waking up every day with this desire to do something for somebody, to focus on the lives of others versus what I used to do was focus on me. Hopefully that makes some sense.
It makes a lot of sense. It's another moment for teaching that I'm going to honor you, Kevin, for your humility and vulnerability. Many high-powered executives or successful people always focus on themselves. They're go-getters, they're runners, and giving. I think I've learned that the two values or the two basic human needs that I need to have in my life are to make a contribution and spirituality. And without those two things, everything else can crumble, and you really have nothing. I smiled because in your book it said something about at 7 a.m. on your calendar you have this thing written to,
Mhm.
I think it's called Thanks for Giving, the number
Yes.
4,
Yes.
where you give gratitude. Dude, it's amazing. I mean, there's so much written on the science behind gratitude. Rewires our brains, as you know this, to think positively. And I wanted to tell you that I feel every morning now. I'll never stop thinking about that. You get up in the morning and you have to fight the demons and
Mhm.
the doubts and the thoughts, and the brain can't have a negative positive thought at the same time. And so keeping that positive thinking is the way forward. And, you know, you're doing it by giving gratitude to others. I love you and your story for that. I want to just share with you something private in my journal I wrote that was inspired by what you said about paying it. Now, this may not make any sense or may be totally wrong or weird, but I mean, I'm learning my faith, so I'm just going to put it out there. When I read that, here's what I wrote. I said, you have repaid, repayment for your sins. We are all sinners. This is from my faith learning.
Mhm.
And you can never be like God. God is perfect. His Son paid for you, and you can repay Him by letting Him work through you in your life, which is what you're doing. The Bible taught me that Christ gave us what we don't deserve, forgiveness of our sins. So in some respects, we'll never repay that debt. He doesn't care. His glory is you out of acts of selflessness, being righteous in His Son, Jesus Christ. And peace comes from letting that burden go, no regrets. That just came into my journal just from
Wow.
reading your story, Kevin, and I'll take a photo of it and send it to you. You've taught me, man, just some things through that I'll be grateful for. We talked about the bucket list. I'll just move on to, as we close the story, that I love this part. Now, here is Kevin. He's a hero. He's gone through this, but he's doing something with his story. And there's somewhere in the hospital, the Heart Hospital, Baylor Plano, I think is the name.
Mhm.
Somewhere there's this thing on the wall. Tell me about that. Called a plaque.
Okay. Well, I wanted to memorialize what that entire organization meant to my wife and I. And the only thing I could come up with is let me write them a very specific, heartfelt letter and put that on a plaque and have it stamped into the plaque with a wood background. And so I spent some time. I wrote it up. We had the plaque made, and I went up and I asked I asked for a meeting with the CEO of the hospital. And of course, throughout my journey and experience, I've come to know a lot of people up there, including him. And I presented it to him, and they hadn't really had anything like that before. And they were just so gracious and so appreciative of the thought and the gift that they put it on the wall at the hospital. So it has a lot of meaning to me.
That's
Call it the plaque.
fantastic.
Yeah.
That's fantastic, and I had this interesting thought around that. First of all, everybody in the book that you're going to get and read, I'm sure that Kevin has the text of what's on that plaque. Uh,
Yes.
I believe you were also asked to be the guest speaker at the annual awards banquet for the hotel, and reading that brought some emotion to me as well. So people can find that in the book. I just thought about the word plaque, and I went, "Holy crap!" Holy, and then I went back to my old mental health training, and they say we have the power in our brains, Kevin. You know this, to
Right.
change the meaning of a thought.
Right.
Human animals and plants can, but we can have thoughts about our thought and attach a different meaning. So plaque, which
Mhm.
actually plugged up your arteries and caused those events, you've turned it into a plaque that you put on the wall in the hospital. And
Yeah,
now that's crazy.
that's the first time that I have ever had that thought. So Tom, thank you for that. I'm
Well,
going to spend a lot of time thinking through that one.
there's my gift to anybody, including you. If you're, instead of thinking about the plaque and the art, anchor that plaque on the wall and
Oh, well,
change the meaning, and that'll always power you through.
there you go.
I've been told I'm kind of strange. That one was odd. Um, the last thing I want to say is just before we move to a couple things I want to do with inducting you with an award is I love this comment. Nurses are never forgotten. And I don't know if you know if you have this in the United States, but in Canada at 7 o'clock, because of the pandemic, we're encouraged to go outside and bang pots. Fire trucks come by with their horns on. They go to the local hospitals. Firefighters will stop and get out of their trucks to honor the nurses. Do you do anything like that in the U.S.? that you know?
Not that. By the way, that sounds like an incredible thing, and I wish we would. We had an occasion a few months ago where all of the cities and counties agreed to do that, but it's not a weekly thing, or it
Yeah.
doesn't no regiment behind it. But I work really hard to continually. And by the way, sometimes I apologize for doing this because I tell medical people I'm not going to stop reminding you of the gift that you bring and the value that you bring. And so I make every effort to that. I've had opportunities to speak for the American Heart Association. I bring that topic up. I did the best job I could to explain it in the book. I've had other speaking opportunities for organizations that give money to the American Heart Association. So I take every opportunity I can to let nurses and clinical and even non-clinical medical staff, and it goes like this: as patients, we move on, we move forward, but we never ever forget you are never ever left behind, especially in our time of prayer. And so that phrase, if you will, has stuck home with a number of people, and I'm so glad and I'm so grateful that I can give them some encouragement when they did it for me. They actually gave me life.
That's very cool. Do you remember the time when your surgery ended, or roughly what time you might have come out of the surgery? I don't know if
Not the exact time. Not the exact time. It was about 4.5 hours, from what I understand,
Okay.
start to finish.
Yeah, I had this wild idea. Maybe it's something like Kevin 2.0, and at the
Interesting.
same time every day, that becomes a magic
Interesting.
moment, and you use that somehow, and everybody around the world who's gone through this, maybe at that moment, comes together.
Well,
Uh,
I got to tell you, Tom, I've maintained an incredible rapport with the guy who actually did the surgeon, so much so that when I was asked by the hospital to go give a talk to the entire operating room department, and I didn't know anything about operating room personnel other than the people that were in the operating room, but I didn't know the whole infrastructure. So I sent him an email and I said, Hey, Dr. Moore, I said, I'd love if you could share with me who all is behind this thing, because when I speak, I like to know what my audience is. He writes me back and he said, tell you what, I thought maybe you might want to observe a surgery. And I thought, oh my gosh, to make a long story short, I went up and I was side by side with him observing this same surgery that I had. So the rapport I have with him, I am going to reach out and say, how do I find out the actual timestamp of when my surgery is done? And I'll get that information. I will put that in my calendar. It's a great idea. Thank you so much.
Oh yeah, tell me that too. It'll be on mine. Wow, I
I
didn't know
will.
that. I didn't know that about you being able to observe. I mean, what a gift that is. I think that's pretty incredible. So everybody, the book is Life 2.0: A Journey from Near Death to New Life. And Kevin, I want to just share with you a couple things. We're going to put it on the screen here. Hopefully, you can see it. Uh, I I don't know if you can see this. It might be hard to see. There it is. Can you see it?
That's the, oh my goodness.
Okay,
You
that's
got
the
it.
that's the artwork for a tattoo. So if you look, it's a heart with a couple angels' wings. It's
Yeah.
the three pillars of what you focus on to recover. K 2.0 is in the middle, and you see the cross there.
Oh,
That
wow.
that's the
You
cross.
gotta send me a picture of that, Tom.
I will send you a picture of that. Uh, I should go into as a side hustle being a tattoo artist. Uh, the other thing I want to do publicly here, everybody, as we move to acknowledging Kevin and wrapping up is, and Kevin, we've gone long today. I want to thank you. Thanks for giving your time, because this is an important episode. We're going to put it on YouTube as a video. We're going to produce it there. We're going to put it out to an international podcast, and we'll have all that lined up in the near future. Your guests can still find this, which is live streaming, will stay on LinkedIn and Facebook, so people will find it there and can watch it anytime up to when we officially produce it. I wrote a review. It's going to be posted on Amazon and Goodreads for your book once we're able to get it up there. Your book is publishing January 19th, 2021, and I titled the review Rockstar Courage Servant Inspiration.
Wow.
Author
Thank you.
Kirk You're welcome. Author KIRKSEY hit a home run with his story about surviving and living with heart disease. I like the narrative storytelling of actual events, his formula for living a better life after heart surgery, and the way he describes discovering Life 2.0. I lost my dad to heart disease, and this book has been a gift. I highly recommend it. So, Way to
Bless
go,
you. Thank you.
fellow author. Bless you too, man. And so now let's get to the award. I always do this on every show. Before I do that, I'm going to honor Kevin with five leadership words. I'm writing these down on my paper. You can't see that as he speaks. The first one is, go figure, rock star. The second one is vulnerability, and the other word for that is courage. You are courage. Third is servant, who you have become, inspiring, and humility. And so those words, I honor you. And officially, by way of this interview, inducting you into the Quiet Warrior Tribe. So welcome to the community. For those who don't understand that, if you're looking at the live stream, there's a picture of what's called a challenge coin behind me. And now this coin was handcrafted and painted in the United States. Sorry, Canada. The front of it is the image of the show art for my podcast. The back of it is the hero's journey narrative, which the show is built on. The significance, Kevin, of these is they were created in World War II era and carried by soldiers and their units to commit to each other a sense of community. If you showed up and you didn't have yours, maybe you bought drinks. And today they're used around the world by first responders, by Alcoholics Anonymous. My father had many of these for his sobriety cakes. And they're used in many, many other areas. You can find them. They're exclusive, less than 50 a year go out, and they're currently now circulating in 7 countries. And this is a high honor, I want to tell you, because only people who can come on the show and check the ego at the door, share their authentic story, good, bad, and then do something with it to move the world forward, become quiet warriors. So welcome to the tribe, Kevin.
Thank you so much. It's quite an honor. I'm thrilled to be a part of it.
And we're going to do an extension on that because we don't talk a lot about the unsung heroes through this journey, which is Joan, your wonderful wife, who I want to meet one day. She can meet my wife, Anna. I will send out, it comes in a cherry box, these coins once the mail system improves. I'm going to honor Joan and give 2 coins. Because we know that the people behind your life, she's one of those that you love and care about. So we do too. On that note, Kevin, I'll give you the last word as we go to wrap up here. Anything you want to leave the audience with?
Absolutely. I want everybody that hears this or reads my book to know that this is not about me. This entire journey is to help pay it forward, to help inspire others in any way that I can. And Tom, it began with you. You were so thoughtful and so giving of your time and your talents to allow me to come on and share parts of my journey and parts of my story. And I appreciate the accolades you've given about the book, but it's not about that. It's really about, I'm on a mission. I know what my lot in life is at this point in time. And if I can express my gratitude to healthcare workers, pay it forward for other fellow human beings, and affirm their value and their relevance and importance, that's what I'm supposed to be doing. And so I hope that you all have been inspired by one thing that Tom or myself have said in this interview. And if you have, then that is the home run for me. So thank you again. I really appreciate it.
All right. Well, everybody, find this show on your favorite podcast channel when it's released in the near future. My 2 favorites are iTunes and Spotify. Download it, listen to it, give it a rating so we can honor Kevin's story. Check out his book when it's published and read it and leave him a review. And everybody, find that true passion like you hear from Kevin. Live your life with purpose. Live the life that you deserve and desire. Thank you, Kevin, for being on the show.
Absolutely. Thank you very much, Tom.
You're welcome. Stand by.